Good morning. We just went over this diagram in our Notice and Wonder activity. If you have not watched that video, please go and do that now. The next thing that we're going to do is take some notes. So you are looking for, I'll make this bigger in just a second, this purple paper. It says part 1 and part 2. You're going to cut it right in half. This is going to go on page 80. This is going to go on page 81. All right, so here is our first page here. We're looking at the angles that are formed by parallel lines. We examined the relationships in the previous video, and now we're going to take some notes on the specific angle pairs. So our first one, as you can see, is alternate interior angles. We're going to talk about what that actually means, and then we're going to give some examples on which are the alternate interior angles. So if we're looking at the location of alternate interior angles is between or inside the parallel lines. You'll notice on the diagram, angles 1, 2, 3, and 4 are between the parallel lines. That's what that means. When we use the word interior, that's what that means. And then they are on opposite sides of the transversal. So the word alternate means to go from one to the other. So we're looking at the transversal and we're saying angle is gonna be on one side, and the other angle is gonna be on the other side. So as we're going down this transversal, we're looking at an angle over here and an angle over there. The measurement of these angles is going to be congruent. That was something that we discovered through our patty paper activity. So if we're looking at the example over here, you might want to color code yours as well. It's up to you to use the highlighters if you'd like to. We're looking at a pair of angles that are between the parallel lines. So two of those four numbered angles. And then ones that are on opposite sides of the transversal. So we want one that's up here and one that's down here because those are the two obtuse angles. Angles 1 and angle 4 are alternate interior angles. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. This symbol means congruent. It's like a squiggly tilde on top of an equal sign. Another pair of alternate interior angles are 2 and 3. Those are our pair of acute angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal and both between the parallel lines. So angle 2 and angle 3 will be congruent to each other. If I'm looking at a pair of parallel lines that have algebraic expressions in them, I just need to locate what kind of angles they are to know what their measurement is. If I look at these two angles, I'm looking at this angle here, and the other angle is over here. Those are on alternate sides of the transversal, both between the parallel lines. They are like our number 2 and number 3 over there. So they are going to be congruent to each other. So if I were to set up an equation, we're not actually going to solve it. We're just going to write the equation to show and communicate our understanding of the relationship. They're congruent to each other. So 6x plus 11 would be equal to 8x minus 19. If they're congruent, they are equal to each other. So alternate interior angles are equal to each other, and that is how they show up on a pair of parallel lines. The next pair that we're going to look at is alternate exterior. So again, exterior this time, though alternate is the same, but now they are exterior. All right, so alternate exterior, this time we're using the word exterior, still alternate, means they're on opposite sides of the transversal still, but this time they're outside the parallel lines. So instead of being between the parallel lines, above or below, so either up here or down here, and they're outside the parallel lines. But they are on opposite sides of the transversal, just like they were before. So if I'm looking at the picture, angle 1, got my highlighter. Angle 1 is above the parallel line. Angle 4 is below the parallel line on the other side of the transversal. Those are a pair of alternate exterior angles. They are also congruent. They are both acute angles So they also are congruent, just like the alternate interior angles. The other pair of alternate exterior angles are 2 and 3. If I'm looking at the example down here, again, I have a similar pair as 2 and 3, like we had the last one. So this angle up here is on the right side of the transversal. This angle down here is on the left side of the transversal. Both are outside the parallel lines, so they would be congruent or equal to each other. So 4x plus 20 would equal 7x minus 16. If you want to solve this and find x, you're welcome to do that. I'm not going to do that right now because it's not the focus of our lesson, but you're welcome to solve these so you get practice, and then you can check in with me about the answers. All right, so looking at page 2, the angles that we form using parallel lines, we're going to be looking at the consecutive interior angles. So the word consecutive in this case means in a row. So we're looking at angles in a row that are also interior angles. So consecutive numbers are like 1, 2, 3. So like whole numbers in a row would be consecutive numbers. Interior again means between parallel lines. So, all right, so we're going to fill in the blank here. The location is between or inside the parallel lines. This time they are on the same side of the transversal. So consecutive interior angles is what they're called. They also can be called same side interior angles. So some worksheets will use consecutive, some will say same side, but they're interchangeable. And their measurement is different this time. So if we look at the actual angles on the same side of the transversal, so angle 1 and 3 are between the parallel lines, but on the same side of the transversal. Since this one's an obtuse angle and that one is an acute angle, they're not going to be equal to each other. So their measurement is that they're going to be supplementary. So supplementary means that they're going to add up to 180 degrees. So angle 1 plus angle 3 is going to equal 180 degrees. So instead of them being equal to each other, they're going to equal 180 degrees. The same would go for 2 and 4 on this side of the transversal. Angle 2, the measurement of angle 2 plus the measurement of angle 4 is going to equal 180. One way to remember that is that when they're on the same side, they're also supplementary. So using that alliteration might be helpful. So if you think same side, supplementary. I don't know why this one won't stay. Okay. So if I'm looking at the example down here, these two are on the same side in the same space as 2 and 4. So this acute angle and this obtuse angle, they're not going to be equal to each other. But if I take 5x minus 19 and I add it to 4x plus 10, together they should equal 180. So my equation would say 5x minus 19 plus 4x plus 10 equals 180. And again, if you'd like to practice solving that, you're welcome to. Check in with me with the answer that you get. But my focus for right now is just to show the relationship by creating the equation, not necessarily solving it. All right, so we move on to our last pair. We have corresponding angles. So the word corresponding talks about the location of the angles, and this one's a little bit different. So because we have these 4 angles at the top and we have these 4 angles at the bottom, we talked about when we used our patty paper that these 4 angles, if you slide down the transversal, will match these 4 angles down here. So when they match each other, those are the ones that are corresponding. So for example, if angle 1 slid down to the bottom angle, it's in the top left, it's gonna match and land on top of angle 5. So those are gonna be considered corresponding. Also, when they match and they're on top of each other, that means they're congruent. So we'll have one of the angles that is above the parallel line and on the outside, and the other one's above the other parallel line and on the inside. So one is above or below, and one is between the parallel lines. So we have one exterior angle and one interior angle, and they're going to be on the same side of the transversal. So their measurement is going to be congruent. Because when I took my patty paper and I slid this angle down, it landed right on top of that angle and they matched up. So angle 1 and angle 5 are congruent to each other. I also have angle 2, when I slide it down, will land on top of angle 6. So those are also congruent to each other. I have angle 3 will land on top of angle 7. So those are also congruent to each other. And I have angle 4 will land on top of angle 8. So those are also congruent to each other. So 1 is congruent to 5, 2 is congruent to 6, 3 is congruent to 7, and 4 is congruent to 8. So if I look at the example down below, this pair here and here are both on the top right of those 4 angles. So if I slide them down, they'll land on top of each other. So they are in fact equal to each other. So 10x minus 26 would equal 7x plus 40. So you're going to use these angle pair terms that we just went over. You're going to glue this into your notebook, and then you're going to do this practice worksheet where, if you look on this side, you have a pair of parallel lines cut by a transversal, and then multiple choice options to choose which pair the stated pairs are, whether they're corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, or consecutive. And then when you go to the other side, you're going to be naming the pair that you see. So here you're just choosing. If you want to fill in the bubbles at the bottom, you can. It's easy for me to check them that way. And then this side, you're just writing down which angle pair you see. When you get to the bottom, you'll notice the first example says vertical angles. So the ones at the bottom may include some of the previous angle pairs that we did. So this is the practice that you should do after finishing your notes. And then on Monday, we'll be able to check in, or Tuesday, whenever I see you next. Let me know if you have questions. Send me a message on Schoology, and have a good weekend.